September 1943. The morning sky is pale and sharp, the kind of cold that bites through a flight suit even at ground level. Above 20,000 feet, it's pure blue. Silent, except for the distant hum of engines. German radar operators at Boulogne pick up two small formations approaching from the west. The Luftwaffe scramble order follows within seconds. Messerschmitt Bf-109Ns and Focke-Wulf 190s climb hard through the haze, expecting the usual. Sluggish American bombers escorted by a few fighters. But what they find is different. Two formations, one high, one low. Moving with surgical symmetry, the sun flashes off twin booms, the glint of aluminum slicing through the clouds. A German pilot blinks once, confused. Zwillinge? Twins? Then the attack comes. The upper group dives, guns blazing. The lower formation climbs to meet them. The Luftwaffe formation is trapped. Fire from above, tracers from below. The sky turns into a cage of contrails and cannon bursts. As the German radio crackles with panic, one pilot screams a single word that spreads across squadrons for months to come. Lightning! The P-38 had arrived, and it was unlike anything the Luftwaffe had faced before. When the Second World War erupted in September 1939, air power was still finding its identity. The Luftwaffe reigned supreme. Disciplined, technologically advanced, and already blooded by the skies of Spain. German fighters like the Messerschmitt Bf-109E dominated early aerial encounters over Europe, supported by ruthless doctrine and superior coordination. Britain's Spitfires would challenge that dominance, but on the vast frontiers ahead, in North Africa, over the Atlantic, across the Pacific, the Allies faced a problem that was as technical as it was strategic. Distance. The United States Army Air Corps, soon to be the U.S. Army Air Forces, understood this long before Pearl Harbor. Their bombers, the B-17s and B-24s, could reach deep into enemy territory, but no fighter of the day could escort them that far. Fighters like the P-40 and the early P-39 were short-legged, designed for defense, not long-range offense. That weakness would cost thousands of bomber crews their lives before it was solved. Back in 1937, the U.S. Army issued a request for an interceptor capable of 360 meters at 20,000 feet, a dream target in the era of radial engines and fixed-pitch propellers. Most companies played it safe. Lockheed, under the genius of Clarence Kelly Johnson, did not. What they submitted was so unconventional that many thought it a mistake. A twin-boomed, twin-engine fighter with a central nacelle for the pilot and armament. It would be called the Lockheed XP-38, X for experimental. The Lightning was unlike anything before it. Each boom housed an Allison V1710 liquid-cooled engine, driving counter-rotating propellers to cancel out torque. Between them sat the pilot in a narrow pod. The cockpit, guns, and nose landing gear all packed into one slender fuselage. 4 50-caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon were mounted tightly in the nose, meaning no convergence issues like on wing-mounted guns. At long range, every bullet met in a deadly focused line. Its performance shattered expectations. In January 1939, test pilot Ben Kelsey took the prototype coast to coast from California to New York in record time. Though the plane crashed short of the runway, the point was made. The P-38 was fast, sleek, and capable of climbing higher than most aircraft on Earth. When America entered the war in December 1941, the Lightning was ready, at least on paper. In the Pacific, it quickly became a legend. The vast distances over ocean suited its long legs perfectly. Pilots like Major Richard Bong and Thomas McGuire made their names flying the P-38, scoring dozens of kills against Japanese aircraft. But Europe was different. The air war over Europe was brutal, cold, and unforgiving. While Pacific missions meant humid tropics and dispersed enemies, Europe meant climbing above 25,000 feet into sub-zero temperatures, facing dense, coordinated Luftwaffe formations and flak so thick it looked like black clouds. Early P-38s suffered from cockpit icing, engine failures, and high-altitude compressibility, the first hints of what pilots would later call Mach tuck. To the untrained eye, the Lightning's twin engines made it look like a bomber, and its performance in those freezing altitudes faltered at first. The British, who received a few early P-38s, were unimpressed, calling it a bit of a disappointment. But Lockheed engineers worked tirelessly, refining superchargers, adjusting controls, and strengthening the airframe. The Lightning's evolution was swift. By 1943, new models like the P-38J and P-38L fixed the flaws. These could climb faster, dive harder, and travel over 2,300 miles without refueling. And most importantly, they could escort American bombers all the way to Germany and back. The Luftwaffe's edge was eroding. German fighter groups were exhausted, their veteran aces spread thin. As the 8th Air Force built up its bomber fleets in England, the Allies needed a guardian, something fast, far-reaching, and lethal. The Lightning became that guardian. But the Lightning was not just a fighter. It was a tactical experiment in design philosophy. The twin-boom layout gave it stability. The counter-rotating propellers neutralized torque. The concentrated firepower meant that even a short burst could tear apart an enemy aircraft. Still, in Europe, one question remained. Could it dominate against the Luftwaffe's elite? Over occupied France, Belgium, and Germany itself? The answer would come from blood, metal, and smoke in the bitter, cold skies over 1943 Europe. The first test would be brutal, and it would change how aerial combat was fought forever. By early 1943, the war in the air over Europe had become a battle of endurance. Every mission deep into enemy territory was a gamble. American bomber crews flying B-17, Flying Fortresses, and B-24 Liberators knew the odds. Daylight raids meant heavy casualties. The 8th Air Force's early campaigns, like the attacks on Schweinfurt and Regensburg, proved one grim truth. Without long-range escorts, the bombers were easy prey. The Luftwaffe controlled the skies over occupied Europe. Its Jagdgeschwader units, JG-2, JG-26, and JG-11 patrolled the air with confidence. They knew exactly when to strike. After Allied escorts turned back, leaving the bomber formations exposed. The German pilots called these moments Freie Jagd, free hunts. When the first P-38 Lightnings arrived in England in 1943, they drew immediate attention. Ground crews called them fork-tailed devils. Luftwaffe intelligence officers noted the strange twin-boom design and initially dismissed it as cumbersome. But soon, their dismissive tone would change. The 20th Fighter Group, stationed at King's Cliff, and the 55th Fighter Group, operating from Nothampstead, were among the first to bring the Lightning into the European theater. Their job, to escort bombers across the Channel over the coast of France, and, for the first time, deep into German-controlled skies. It was a monumental leap in range and coordination. But the Lightning's early months in Europe were rough. Cold air thickened oil, froze carburetors, and slowed engine response. Compressibility, the near-supersonic shockwave that formed over wings in high-speed dives, caused P-38s to lock up uncontrollably. Pilots described it as the stick turning to stone. In those early missions, the Lightning's technological brilliance was tested by the harsh physics of high-altitude flight. Still, it carried something few other fighters could: reach. A Lightning could accompany bombers all the way to Berlin, something no other American fighter could claim in 1943. Gradually, the tactics evolved. Instead of meeting German fighters head-on, Lightning squadrons began experimenting with split-vector attacks, dividing formations into two groups approaching from different angles. One would climb high into the sun, the other would drop below radar coverage and approach from low altitude. At the signal, both groups would strike simultaneously. A hammer and anvil of speed and firepower. This was where the P-38's twin-engine reliability became a weapon of tactics. A single-engine fighter risked losing everything if one engine was hit. A Lightning could still make it home. This confidence allowed pilots to take risks others wouldn't, diving harder, cutting closer, and flying lower under flak fire. It wasn't long before the Luftwaffe noticed the difference. German pilots described the first encounters as disorienting. The figure Lightning's twin booms made range estimation difficult. Against the sun, its silhouette looked like two fighters flying side by side. A visual illusion that caused fatal hesitation. When one appeared in the clouds, another seemed to emerge elsewhere, confusing formation leaders. Luftwaffe ace Adolf Galland later admitted that the P-38, though not the best dogfighter at low altitude, had a psychological advantage. Its speed in the dive and climb made it a ghost, striking from angles German pilots weren't used to defending. By late 1943, the P-38's reputation was growing. In the Mediterranean, Lightnings operating from bases in North Africa and Italy wreaked havoc on Axis transport convoys and airfields. Over Anzio, they strafed and bombed with precision, using their stable firing platform to devastating effect. In the north, the 474th Fighter Group perfected coordinated attacks that turned the Luftwaffe's rigid formations into chaos. One German pilot, in a post-war interview, recalled, "You could not turn fast enough. They came from two sides, and before you reacted, you were already in their crossfire." But it wasn't just the aircraft, it was the doctrine. American pilots were learning that flexibility, communication, and initiative could outmatch experience. When a German formation dove to escape, the lower Lightning group would climb to meet them. When they tried to climb, the higher group dove down in unison. It was mechanical, precise, almost inhuman in its coordination. By the end of 1943, Luftwaffe control over Western Europe's skies was no longer absolute. The Lightning was not perfect. It required expert hands. But it was fast. It was bold, and it was changing the rhythm of the air war. The Germans called it der Gabelschwanzteufel, the fork-tailed devil. It was a name earned not through propaganda, but through fear, and that fear was about to spread even deeper. Because by early 1944, the Lightning's tactics would evolve into something far deadlier than a mere escort strategy. It would become a weapon of coordinated terror in the sky. The human angle. The men who flew the Lightning, the cockpit of a P-38. Lightning was a world unto itself, cramped, vibrating, deafening. The pilot sat between two roaring Allison engines, with vibrations passing through the airframe like a living pulse. At 25,000 feet, the air was thin, the canopy rim lined with frost. Oxygen hissed softly through the mask. Every breath was measured. For many American pilots in 1943 and 1944, this was their home. Their survival depended on the strange aircraft that looked more like a mechanical insect than a plane. Veterans recalled their first encounters with the Lightning with awe and intimidation. The power of twin engines gave them confidence, but also a sense of responsibility. One mistake in power management, and the aircraft could yaw violently or compress into a deadly dive. Yet the men who mastered it became some of the most feared aviators in the world. Major Robin Olds, who would later become a legend in the Vietnam War, first cut his teeth in a P-38. He described the aircraft as a machine that punished hesitation and rewarded aggression. To fly the Lightning was to commit fully, to every dive, every burst, every maneuver. In the European theater, pilots of the 55th Fighter Group were among the first to test the aircraft's endurance. Missions lasted up to 6 hours, covering over 1,000 miles. They would escort bombers to the heart of Germany and still have enough fuel to dogfight. But it was lonely work. High above the clouds, the cockpit was a freezer. Oil congealed, guns froze. The silence between engagements was suffocating. Yet, when the call came, bandits, 11 o'clock high, every nerve came alive. The twin engines roared as throttles pushed forward, and the sky became geometry. Angles, vectors, speed, and instinct. One wrong decision could end it all. But those who mastered the Lightning described a singular feeling: invincibility. It wasn't the comfort of armor or numbers. It was the cold precision of a machine that mirrored their own resolve. 2. The enemy's angle. Fear and confusion. For the Luftwaffe, the first real encounters with the P-38 were bewildering. German pilots had learned to read the sky, to identify aircraft by their silhouettes and movement. They could tell a Spitfire from a Mustang, a B-17 from a B-24, even from miles away. But the Lightning broke that logic. Its twin-boom design confused range estimation. At a distance, it looked like two aircraft flying close together. When it turned, the profile changed shape, making it difficult to gauge direction. This was not just a visual trick. It was a tactical nightmare. When two Lightning groups executed a split attack, it was almost impossible to distinguish one formation from the other until it was too late. The Luftwaffe's defensive instincts, climbing to meet a threat or diving to evade, were suddenly punished. Reports from JG-26. Schlageter, the elite fighter wing based in northern France, noted multiple losses from unexpected vector attacks. Pilots described being caught in crossfire from converging formations. One after-action report stated, "They struck from opposite sides, coordinated, invisible until the last second. Our warning came only from tracers. Even experienced aces like Josephu, Priller and Walter Osau warned subordinates to avoid engagement if possible when facing Lightnings in high-altitude pairs. Psychologically, the Lightning carried a weight the Luftwaffe had not anticipated. The twin engines meant survivability. The enemy could take hits and keep flying. German pilots who crippled one side often watched in disbelief as the aircraft stabilized on one engine and escaped. The nickname Gabelschwanz Teufel, the fork-tailed devil, was not born from propaganda. It was born from frustration and fear. 3. The technological angle. Precision in metal, the P-38. Lightning was not just another fighter. It was a mechanical philosophy. Every inch of its design represented a leap forward in aeronautical engineering. Its twin-boom structure allowed for compact concentration of power. The counter-rotating propellers eliminated torque roll, a common issue that plagued single-engine fighters. Its tricycle landing gear offered unprecedented visibility during takeoff and landing, a rare advantage in an era dominated by tail-draggers, but its true brilliance lay in its armament. Configuration: got 4 50-caliber machine guns and a single 20 mm Hispano cannon, all mounted in the nose. No convergence angle, no guesswork. Every bullet went straight ahead, deadly accurate at nearly 1,000 yards. German pilots accustomed to weaving dogfights were stunned by how far the Lightning could strike. It didn't need to close the distance. It needed only a line of sight. The P-38 also pioneered intercooler and turbo supercharger technology. At altitudes where other fighters gasped for air, the Lightning breathed freely. Its engines maintained power even at 30,000 feet, an altitude the Luftwaffe rarely expected to fight at effectively. This high-altitude advantage made it ideal for escort and interception missions. Allied intelligence even used P-38s for photo reconnaissance, their long range and speed making them perfect for dangerous deep penetration missions over Germany. But what truly made the Lightning a terror was not just its engineering, it was how it was used. The combination of its speed, climb rate, and range gave rise to a new aerial strategy. Two groups attacking from different directions, converging at the same point, overwhelming the enemy before they could respond. It was aerial chess, and the Lightning was both knight and queen. By the end of 1943, the P-38 was more than a weapon. It was a symbol. To American pilots, it represented ingenuity and survival. To German pilots, it represented something far worse: inevitability. And as 1944 dawned, that inevitability would harden into fear, because the Lightning's split-attack doctrine was about to reach its most devastating form. A moment when German squadrons realized that nowhere in the sky was safe for the leadership angle. Vision from the top, behind the ETV. P-38's rise stood one man who believed that air power could win wars. General Henry Hap Arnold. Arnold, commander of the U.S. Army Air Forces, was a visionary trapped between two eras: the cautious doctrines of pre-war aviation and the ruthless demands of global conflict. He saw the Lightning not merely as a fighter, but as a strategic instrument. Its range, speed, and stability made it the only American fighter capable of escorting bombers deep into German airspace. And for Arnold, protecting those bombers was non-negotiable. In early 1943, after disastrous bomber losses over Schweinfurt and Regensburg, Arnold ordered a full re-evaluation of escort strategy. "No more half measures," he wrote. "The bombers must have guardians that can go all the way." That mandate set the stage for the Lightning's European resurgence. Lockheed's chief engineer, Clarence Kelly Johnson, worked directly with field commanders to refine the design, improving heating systems, stabilizing high-altitude controls, and boosting engine reliability. Every mission returned lessons, and those lessons were fed back into production. The evolution from P-38F to P-38J wasn't just technical, it was philosophical. The Lightning became the first truly global fighter, operating from Alaska to the Mediterranean, from England to the Pacific. It embodied the American belief that technology could bridge any distance and win any war. Arnold's faith was not misplaced. By late 1943, bomber loss rates began to decline. Pilots returning from deep strikes reported something new. "We saw lightnings over Germany." The message was clear. The Americans were no longer confined to the coasts. They owned the skies. 5. The tactical angle. The two-direction attack. Every aircraft has its moment. That single tactic that defines its legacy. For the P-38 Lightning, that moment came with the two-direction pincer attack. It was born out of necessity. Early escort missions had shown that tight formations of fighters were easy prey for well-coordinated Luftwaffe interceptors. German aces would dive in from altitude, slash through the bomber streams, and climb away before the escorts could react. The Lightning's twin-engine power changed that dynamic. American squadron leaders began experimenting with split formations, dividing their groups into high and low elements, separated by several thousand feet of altitude and several miles of distance. The upper element would draw German fighters upward, using the Lightning's climb performance to force them into the vertical. Meanwhile, the lower element would use the sun or cloud cover to approach unseen. When the enemy committed to one direction, the second formation would strike from the opposite vector. It was a coordinated ambush in the sky, fast, violent, and psychologically crushing.